Isaiah 13. The burden of Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amoz did see.
Americans are asking, why do they hate us? They hate what they see right here in this chamber. A democratically elected government. Their leaders are self-appointed. They hate our freedoms, our freedom of religion, our freedom of speech, our freedom to vote and assemble and disagree with each other.
A sword is upon the liars, and they shall dote. A sword is upon her mighty men, and they shall be dismayed.
Right after 9/11, about 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who had used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you gotta come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision, we're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq, why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." I said, "Is it classified?" He said, "Yes, sir."
Saddam Hussein and his sons must leave Iraq within 48 hours. Their refusal to do so will result in military conflict, commenced at a time of our choosing. For their own safety, all foreign nationals, including journalists and inspectors, should leave Iraq immediately.
I said, "We're going to war with Iraq, why?" He said, "I don't know."
This is what it's like on the receiving end. Last night, a square mile in central Baghdad seemed like hell on earth. An inferno.
Behold, I am against thee, O destroying mountain, saith the Lord, which destroyest all the earth.
Last night, on my orders, America's armed forces began strikes against ISIL targets in Syria.
Starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Today, the American people give thanks for the extraordinary service of our men and women in uniform, including the pilots who flew these missions with the courage and professionalism that we've come to expect from the finest military that the world's ever known.
He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And
at the same time, we're going to keep increasing the pressure on the Assad regime. We both agree that Assad needs to go. He needs to transfer power to a transitional body. That is the only way that we're going to resolve this crisis.
We've got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail."
We're keeping the oil. We have the oil. The oil is secure. We left troops behind only for the oil.
I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon. And thou wast not aware, thou art found, and also caught, because thou hast striven against the Lord.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today Today, I authorize the Armed Forces of the United States to begin a limited military action in Libya in support of an international effort to protect Libyan civilians. That action has now begun.
He said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail.
A sound of battle is in the land, and of great destruction. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon become a desolation among the nations?
Yes, we came, we saw, he died.
In this video just released, there he is, crowds surrounding him. The last bloody moments of his life show him wounded and begging for mercy. He struggles, stumbles, and shouts as he fights against the enraged rebels. Haram Aleiko, he says over and over, an Arabic expression that literally means, this is a sin for you.
We came, we saw, he died.
Behold, I am against thee, O thou most proud, saith the Lord God of hosts. For thy day is come, the time that I will visit thee.
He said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail.
The New York Times is reporting that the U.S. is escalating what it calls a secret war in Somalia.
Starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran, and finishing off Iran, and finishing off Iran.
That old Beach Boys song, Bomb Iran. Bomb, bomb, bomb. Bomb Iran. Bomb, bomb, bomb. Bomb Iran. Bomb, bomb, bomb. Bomb Iran. Bomb, bomb, bomb.
The Houthis are completely backed by Iran. I've been saying for 6 months now, hit Iran. They have oil fields out in the open. They have the Revolutionary Guard headquarters you can see from space. Blow it off the map.
Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. Their bows also shall dash the young men to pieces, and they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eye shall not spare children. And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency, shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah.
Well, Stephen Kinzer, I'd like to ask you about one of, to my mind, you cover it in your book, Overthrow, one of the all-time unfair fights in world history, perhaps one of the most egregious examples of a large nation attacking a small nation. I'm talking about the invasion of Grenada in 1985, I think it was, under Ronald Reagan, a country that has maybe 1/3 of the population of the Bronx and assaulted by American troops. Could you talk about the invasion of Grenada? 83, I'm sorry.
This really is a remarkable episode, as you pointed out. So it happened in 1983, soon after Reagan had come into office. Grenada is a tiny island in the Caribbean. Its entire population could fit into the Rose Bowl in California. That's how small it is. But the United States was looking for a victory. Reagan came into office with this idea that the U.S. had to shake off what he called the Vietnam syndrome, the syndrome that we were, as he called it, a pitiful, helpless giant. He wanted to show that the United States was still able to crush enemies. But as was always the case during the Cold War, we were never able to strike against our real enemies. Nobody ever proposed bombing Moscow or invading China. So we had to go after countries that weren't really our enemies, but were smaller and easier to push around. And there hardly was a country smaller and easier to push around than poor little Grenada.
That thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, How hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked, and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger, is persecuted, and none hindereth.
The rest of the world can see it all too clearly. I said in my monologue that really the West at this point is morally and politically bankrupt. Do you share that view?
Absolutely. I mean, bankruptcy, you're actually insulting people that go through bankruptcy by saying that the West is bankrupt. the concept of bankruptcy implies at one point in time that we were solvent. There is no solvency here. There is no recovery. We're worse than bankrupt. We are decrepit. We are rotten. We are falling apart at the seams. We are the exact opposite of what we claim to be, which makes it even worse. I respect people more. I respect evil people who admit that they're evil. I say, at least you're honest about who you are. Here in the United States and in Europe and in the United Kingdom, we claim to be something that we're not. And in the most Orwellian fashion, we use doublespeak and double action. We say something, but we're going to do the exact opposite. This is beyond bankruptcy. This is literally the total manifestation of evil. We have become that which must be eradicated. And I say this as a proud American who believes in what America should be, but not what America has become. And at this point in time, if America can't heal itself, and it looks like the American people more and more are incapable of that kind of self-cure, maybe it's time for the world to say, America's not welcome amongst the civilized nations anymore. And I would say that the same holds true for the United Kingdom.
Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her. Take balm for her pain. If so be she may be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go every one into his own country. For her judgment reacheth unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies.
Are the wars in Israel and Ukraine more than the United States can take on at the same time?
We're the United States of America, for God's sake. The most powerful nation in the history, not in the world, in the history of the world. The history of the world. We can take care of both of these and still maintain our overall international defense.
How much she hath glorified herself, and lived deliciously. So much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death, and mourning, and famine. And she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. Prepare against her the nations with the kings of the Medes, the captains thereof, and all the rulers thereof, and all the land of his dominion.
Vladimir Putin, speaking with Russian state TV, said that Russia is ready for nuclear war if it's under threat. Here's Putin in his own words.
We are ready to use weapons, including any weapons, including those you mentioned, if we are talking about the existence of the Russian state, about damaging our sovereignty and independence. As to the states that say they have no red lines regarding Russia, they should realize that Russia won't have any red lines regarding these states either.
He said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail.
How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon become a desolation among the nations?